So, can you talk about some stretches that are important for fencers to be doing?
Sure. I think fencers, for one, I mean, I know fencers, for one, have like overly used quads, and that's what leads to a lot of like knee injuries or stuff like that. So if I were to give anyone a stretch, I would definitely make it a quad stretch. And like if you've ever worked with me, I'm like kind of particular about how you do it. But it also like teaches body position, so that's why I do it. So that would be my number one, is a half kneeling quad stretch. What about you, Ahmed? What's your favorite fencing stretch?
So that fencers should understand is a distinguish between mobility and flexibility work. So with mobility, I will have, I would say a good one to do is T-spine rotation, which is hands behind the head. You're in a half kneeling position. One knee is down, one foot is up, right? And then you're just rotating to the side of the knee that's up, right? That's a good mobility work, right? Then if I'm doing a flexibility stretch, just like what Kelleigh just said, that stretch he said that's a good, flexibility stretch, right? So those are two things definitely I think fencers should be doing. But there are many more, but it's just to know exactly what am I doing this stretch for? Is this more of a mobility or is this more on flexibility and understanding those
Yeah.
distinctions?
Yeah.
And
So
it's very important to have both of them included into your program and into your training.
yeah. So like we kind of mentioned earlier, we're not trying to be like power lifters, although I'm sure power lifters need to do some kind of mobility work. Um, the when I see mobility, I think of it as like flexibility for me is the range of motion you have passively, and mobility is being able to like actively control that range of motion. So you like, if I'm laying on my back and someone lifts my leg up, how much passive range of motion do I have there versus my active range of motion where I can lift it to that point. So those are going to differ.
Yeah.
And like Ahmed said, mobility is like definitely more important. I don't think either of us are like making an argument to not stretch. Like I think but it's like not as important as people seem to think it is. And there was one thing I was going to bring up is there's this saber fencer from FC. Every day after practice, he was stretching his hamstrings, and he would do it for like a minute. And I could see him timing it too. So I was like, he's clearly like really doing this on purpose. There's something bothering him. So I went over to him and I was like, why are you doing this? Because I don't really believe unless you have a problem, I don't really believe you should be just spending hours stretching your hamstrings. And he was like, well, like I can't touch my toes and I always feel tight. So I showed him this exercise where he's actually in like a bent knee position, strengthening his hamstrings and like learning to position his pelvis properly. And I'm pretty sure he thinks I'm like a wizard now because he's like, I can touch my toes. So all that to say, like not being able to touch your toes or like feeling tight is not always a flexibility issue. Sometimes it's about like a muscle being overused or you're being out of position so the muscle feels tight, right? Like the hamstring is attached to the back of my hips. So if the back of my hips is high, then the muscle feels tight, right? I don't know if you agree with this kind of thing, Ahmed, but if I put my hips in the right position, the muscle is going to be in its proper positioning, and then I can like use it better, like a gear on a bike kind of thing. Like things are going to move better.
Yeah.
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 So